Insanity. The act of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Apparently Albert Einstein never actually said this, we don't really know who did, but either way it's a pretty accurate definition given how common it is for people to act this way. Time and time again, America keeps voting for two bloated, corrupt, incompetent parties who with every year grow more and more disconnected from their electorate. An electorate mostly consisting of ordinary working class men and women who for some reason act like those are their only two options. They think that if they just, vote for these guys one last time, then this time they'll definitely start working in the interest of the common people. Trust me, bro. Now, this approach to voting isn't really surprising considering these are the only two parties that meaningfully win elections. It's a lot easier to just keep the status quo and hope it gets better someday than to tear up the script and start from a blank page. People take this attitude to the polls with every election, and every time there is no change, no progress made, just a more divided, frustrated populace whose interests are being ignored. And that goes for both sides of the aisle. Republicans, you think your party cares about the Second Amendment? They were more than happy to ban open carry and 50 BMG in California. They also didn't pass the Hearing Protection Act when they had Congress majority in 2017, which would have taken suppressors off the NFA. And shortly after that, Trump signed a law banning bump stocks. Rest assured, Republicans don't care about your gun rights, and they likely care even less after, recent events. They don't do a great job with the economy either, because red states rely on federal aid more than anyone else, and it was a Republican administration which created the worst economic disaster in American history back in 1929. Sure, Trump might give us a few tax breaks like he did in his first term, but he's not bringing back the thriving middle class of the 1960s. And guess what? Neither are the Democrats. They claim to be for the working class, but when a minimum wage increase was proposed in 2021, several Democrats voted to keep it out of the bill they were drafting. They don't really push for universal health care either. In fact, they don't even seem to care about improving the system we currently have. There was a whole controversy in 2009 when a big-name Democrat voted against strengthening the Affordable Care Act. Democrats say they want to fight climate change, but then do nothing to improve public transport or make electric cars affordable for the average person, and instead keep signing new contracts with oil companies. They also drag their feet on building more nuclear power plants and renewable energy sources. Oh, and they haven't done much to reduce police brutality either. The fact is, both parties say a lot, but they don't do a lot for the average person. All they do is give bailouts to corporations and pass laws that make it easier for the government to spy on us. Neither side seems to realize that their party is a sinking ship that cannot be saved. This November, the Democrats suffered a huge blow in the elections, and immediately the liberals began their infighting. They started arguing if the Democrats need to lean more left or lean more right, if the Democrats need to appeal to a different voter base, if the Democrats need to change their policies, if the Democrats need to nominate different candidates or fix their primaries. Democrats. What if we just don't? What if we just stop trying to help parties that have no interest in helping us? Both Democrat and Republican voters are being failed by the parties that promised them a higher standard of living. Parties which have long abandoned the working class and, trust me, are not coming back. Why would they? It's much more profitable for them to take campaign donations and do insider trading than to actually help the people who voted for them. What if we just tell these parties to go pound sand because they're only interested in making themselves richer while our wages stay the same and the cost of living, medicine, and education keeps going up? Bernie Sanders has the right idea. He's been running as an independent since 2016. But frankly, newer generations should be taking his place in office because both Bernie and Nancy Pelosi were born before the first atomic bombs were dropped. I mean, come on, woman. Even Mitch McConnell is retiring next year. Take the hint. Now, of course, this is much easier said than done. We have to fix how third parties run, how they are set up, and how people vote for them. For some reason, third parties are obsessed with doing these moonshots at the presidential elections and then do a surprised Pikachu face when they get no electoral votes. Yeah, because nobody knows who you are, what your policies are, what your personality is like, because yes, that does matter in politics. Nobody trusts you. You don't have street cred, and you're not going to get it on the federal level because you don't have the resources to do that. Start small. Run for mayor, state level representative, state level senator. You guys don't even try to win governor races, and you think you can win the presidency? And no, you can't just pull a Donald Trump and get in with no experience, because Trump ran with an already established party and had billions of dollars to finance a nationwide campaign. You probably do not. And how do you secure the funds to run on the federal level? You build your reputation on the state level. Then once people actually know you, secure at least 5% of the popular vote in a presidential election, which will make you eligible for public funding, and then you can snowball from there. Yeah, it'll take a few election cycles, but what do you expect? Policy doesn't change overnight. Now, public funds will supply you with a couple $1 million to further build your reputation, but I do not know if it's enough to actually win federal elections. And this is the part where I'm going to speculate a little, because here's the thing. The main issue with this country right now is that there's too much money in politics, too much blatant bribery and corruption, and the people suffer because of it. A third party would need to get elected under the premise that they will put an end to all this influence from corporations and rich people in government. Of course, they wouldn't receive any campaign donations from those rich people or corporations in that case, and public funding may not be enough to cover the campaign effectively, so they would have to switch over to crowdfunding. And if this party does receive enough traction in our country, could they reliably fund their campaigns from money given by their supporters? I mean, the Mormon Church receives billions every year from their followers, so if they can do it, maybe a third party can do it as well. But how can a third party get such a following to begin with? I think the party would have to prioritize the issues that most people can relate to, so again, lobbying, government corruption, and then things that are more polarized like guns and healthcare, that they can kind of set aside for the time being and say that like, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But if people really insist, and let's be real, they probably will, again, the general public is pretty divided right now, so for polarizing issues, you'd have to carefully propose a solution that they will be willing to accept, even if it requires compromises. For example, the fentanyl on our streets, the aforementioned lobbying, I think both liberals and conservatives agree that it's bad, there's too much of it, that we need to crack down on it. So it shouldn't be difficult to propose a solution for that. But if it's something like abortion, one side wants it completely banned, the other side wants it completely allowed. Clearly we won't get either of those things, so what if we treat it like a sort of necessary evil and then say that if states choose to ban it, they have to include exceptions for incest, sexual assault, and if a doctor deems it necessary to save the life of the mother. It's not an ideal solution, but it's one that could calm people down for the time being. Same thing with guns. Don't ban or take anything away from law-abiding citizens, but rework the background check process to make it more extensive and do a better job of filtering out psychos and criminals. You could also potentially require people to take a class before they can purchase a firearm, and instate armed security in schools for the time being while we wait for gun violence to go down. For our healthcare system, we could adopt a model similar to Switzerland, where everyone still has private insurance, but it's not tied to your employer and it's heavily regulated so that you can afford a good insurance policy even if you, say, work a minimum wage job at McDonald's or something. It will take some discussing and negotiating, but eventually I do think people will agree to something. You can also appeal to voters based on where you're doing your rally. In more conservative places, talk about fighting illegal immigration. In more left-leaning places, talk about increasing funding for public programs. I mean, that's pretty much common sense, but you gotta remember to do it that way. Of course, before worrying about funds, you actually have to get noticed by the public to begin with. The media won't promote you or allow you on the debates because they're all in the pockets of the rich. Perhaps it will get to a point where you're too big to ignore, but before then, you'll have to engage through the internet, social media, podcasts, local radio stations, traveling around the country and doing rallies wherever you can, flyers in the mail, maybe even a little knocking from door to door, but not too much because otherwise people will get annoyed. And as the party gains steam, it's important for them to stay as decentralized as possible. Because if the party has a single spiritual leader, Martin Luther King type of figure, you know what's going to happen to them? Yes, the establishment is willing to go to those lengths to eliminate opposition. There cannot be one person spearheading the whole thing. Obviously, people will have to be nominated to be candidates in elections, but they just have to be ordinary party members with no special privileges or status. Yes, they have to be competent and charismatic, but if something happens to them, the party has to be able to find a replacement without the whole thing collapsing. These risks can be mitigated by investing in physical security, maybe even forming a militia of some kind because they can protect party representatives and are unlikely to be bribed or betray them. They would also serve as a deterrent so the elites don't try anything funny. However, the establishment can resort to other tactics like slander or lawsuits, so you'll need robust legal protection and a good PR management team to fight that. And finally, the voters need to change their attitude. This will probably happen if the party campaigns properly, but people need to realize that they don't have to choose between corrupt or more corrupt. The reason people keep voting for the status quo is not just because it's easier, but also because everyone has this attitude of why should I bother voting third party if they're never going to win? And that is largely why third parties don't. But if people have faith in a new party that can fix things and people actually vote for it, it might take a few years, but eventually they will start winning elections. And when they are voted in, first they can fix the major issues and then take care of smaller things like finally switching over to the metric system and making Puerto Rico a state. They can also implement ranked choice voting because it would help third parties receive more attention. But if we want that, or any other beneficial reforms in the country, we will have to vote in a third party to do that, because the two parties we have right now are not interested in that and never will be. Again, these are just my thoughts, a proposal for how we can improve things in the country. Maybe someone else has a better strategy, but this is how I would suggest doing it. And that's the end of this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. In case you didn't notice, I did give the channel a small makeover, and I also got a new mic, so hopefully the audio sounds better. Stay tuned for more stuff. As always, this was your captain speaking, and I'll see you later.